All right, welcome back. And today we're talking about function notation. And function notation is going to be given to you guys something like this. It'll look like f parenthesis x equals mx plus b, or some values over here. Okay. Now, we got to remember with functions, you have an input, and that's your x value. And we have an output, which is your f of x. Okay. And real quick, the f of x, the f parenthesis x, you don't look at it f times x. How you read it is the function f of x. Okay, that's what you'd actually say. And side note again, if you've seen slope-intercept form before, this is very similar to that. And you pretty much treat it the same way. Same as y equals mx plus b. So if you're like, hey, that looks familiar, it does. And we really do treat the f of x similar to the y in a lot of cases. Now, hopping into some examples for how you're going to see this and how you work with it. All right, some examples. So you'll see something like this. Evaluate f of x equals negative 4x plus 7 when x equals 5 and negative 3. So what we have to do here is just a couple substitutions, okay? So we're going to substitute the given values in for x. And that's it. So for the, I'll break this into two parts. For the x equals 5, we take the 5. And remember, we're working with f of x equals negative 4x plus 7. And all we do is we take the 5 and we put it into both x positions, here and there. Okay? So now I write f, not of x anymore, I put a 5 in, equals negative 4, not x, because I put a 5 in. And I'm going to just put that in parentheses. 4 times 5 plus 7. We have to remember this is like negative 4 times x. Right here, this is negative 4 times x. So right here, remember when we have numbers in the parentheses, we are timesing them when they're right next to another number. So that'd be negative 4 times 5. And now I just solve this guy. So negative 4 times 5 is negative 20 plus 7, and that's going to be negative 13. And I just write f of 5 equals negative 13, which means if I put 5 into my function, I get negative 13 as my output. Now I do a second problem with the second value. So I write x equals negative 3 over here, and I do the same thing. I have my f of x equals negative 4x plus 7, and all I do is I take my negative 3, remember your sign, and I put it in for my x's, both of them. So I write f of negative 3 equals negative 4 times negative 3 plus 7. And now I just solve the right side of that equation. So that's going to be negative 4 times negative 3. Oh, remember, negative times a negative is a positive. That's 12, positive 12 plus 7. And that's going to give us 19. So 19 equals f of negative 3. Bop. So this would actually be your answer. F of 5 equals negative 13. And then someplace else, you've got f of negative 3 equals 19. So you're going to have as many answers as you have x values that you're supposed to solve. Now, some problems will have you flip this, and they will give you a situation like this. This is another example. Given h of x, and that's a different function now. So it's the function h of x, or you could just call it h of x, equals negative 7x. Find x when h of x equals 63. Now, this one is it gives you different information, because it doesn't say solve for x. It pretty much says, or it says solve for x, but it gives you h of x instead of x, like the last one. So this is your output, right? But all we do here is we take this 63. I'm going to write our function here. H of x equals negative 7x. And all we do is we take this 63 and we put it in for the output, which is right here. So that guy turns into a 63. And then the right side stays the same. And how do we continue with this problem? Well, now we actually go back to chapter 1 and solve for our x. So we need to get our x totally by itself. So I divide both sides by negative 7. I do need to remember my negative rules here, or I could just use a calculator. I get negative 9 equals x. Boom. So again, all we do is we substitute our value in for the output, and then we solve for x. Okay. Now, one last thing you might see is with graphs. And graphs, if you can remember that y, well, I'm going to show you with graphs. We've got find x. Oh, I got to